Hey everyone, and welcome to our first class of Guilty Pleasures, Reading and Writing Genre Fiction. I'm your professor, Professor Jorgensen. So, one of the things I want to be clear with this class is that we are not doing the class synchronously, which means we are not having a Zoom meeting or a Google Hangouts or Google Meets, whatever the school uses. We're not doing that. So what we're going to be doing instead is that I am going to be posting lessons for you, and you are going to be watching them when you have time, doing the activities associated with them, and turning things in according to the dates on Blackboard. And we'll get to that in a second. So let's kind of talk about the course first. So if you want to follow along with me, this is on Blackboard. Your syllabus is, if we go to handouts, your syllabus is right here. By the way, if you see me going down here and clicking this, just kind of bringing it up, I'm just making sure that this is still recording. I have been burned before. So if you see me bring that up, just ignore it. I'm just making sure it's still working. So if you click that, your syllabus will come up. And with this class, let's kind of go through piece by piece. First off, the course description. This is a creative writing course, and it's centered around genre fiction. And we're going to hopefully learn about how to read like a writer, which is kind of dissecting text by looking at kind of their structure, their function, how they work, why they work, etc. And you'll also hopefully learn techniques that will help you be proficient in writing things like sci-fi, fantasy, historical fiction, romance, any genre your heart desires is kind of what I'm aiming for. Each week you'll be given some readings, not necessarily story readings, but like helpful writing tip reading kind of things, along with creative pieces that'll be turned in. It says in here every week, but yeah, it's not going to be every week. You'll see. We'll get to that. At the end of the semester, you will hand in a revised portfolio. So my hope is that you will learn how to construct fiction pieces based on what you learn in class. You'll revise those pieces based on the feedback that I give you and your classmates give you. And by the end of the semester, you will have a good 12 to 15 pages of writing that you hopefully are proud of and are excited to share. The bulk of your grade, by the way, will be based on your writing, your feedback to your group mates, which should be substantive, and we'll talk about that, and your final portfolio. And like I said, we'll go through kind of the piece by piece in a few minutes. So, your required texts for this class. I have picked 3 things for you that I think are interesting, well-written, interestingly constructed with good characters, and short. The reason why I picked things that are fairly short is because I know that the majority of this class is not English majors. And I feel like foisting a 400-page novel on students who are not English majors or who may not be big readers is something that will make me want to bang my head against the wall. So I'm not doing that. And you won't enjoy it either. So instead, I've decided to pick 2 novellas. Novellas being things that are, decently short, and a graphic novel. So let's kind of look at these really quick. And I'm just going to bring up Amazon. Okay. So our first book is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Ningyi Vo. It is very good. It is fantasy that has a Asian flavor to it. It's only 124 pages. I know some of you are like, only, but I swear it's really good and it's short. And what I wanted to bring this up for is that I don't care what format you buy this book. You can read it as a paperback, you can get it as a Kindle file, you can listen to it on audiobook. I really don't care. As long as you're able to actually read it or listen to it, process it, be able to talk about, digest it, kind of see the techniques used, that's really all I care about. So, if you want to buy used copies, that's fine. If you want to get a Kindle copy, that's fine. And by the way, you do not need a Kindle to read Kindle books. I'll bring this up in here. I have a Kindle app on the bottom of my screen right here. And it's something you can download for free. And your books will just pop right up on this Kindle app. So you can read it on your computer, on your phone, if you have a tablet, anything like that. So you do not need an actual Kindle. And you can see, it's got all that in there. Okay. So that's fine. I always suggest this to my students that the cheapest way is probably the best way for you guys, because you're not going to be keeping these things long term or, returning to them over and over again. Audiobooks. I am a fan of audiobooks for my students who potentially have ADHD, just have a hard time getting through reading, dyslexia, etc. That's definitely an option for you. And the only thing with audiobooks is it may take you longer to get through because it's it's usually several hours of listening. But if that's what you're into, go for it. Check it out. I think Audible on Amazon lets you have 2 free books. You just need to make sure you cancel your subscription after whatever number of days, so you could always take and do that. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything with this. So, this is the first book, like I said, The Empress of Salt and Fortune. The second book is Every Heart a Doorway by Sina McGuire. And what I really like about this one is that it is a young adult novel. It has to do kind of with a portal fantasy, so accidentally walking into other worlds. Very diverse, very interesting. Very, very good world building. So we'll get to that. And the last one is Saga Volume 1, which is a graphic novel. So, in this case, I suggest either the paperback or the Kindle app. The good thing is, though, is that the paperback is really cheap. It's been around for quite a few years. So if you want to get a used copy, you can get one for less than $5. And we're not going to be reading Saga till, I think, later in the semester. So if you want to buy it used, and it will take a little bit to get here, you have time. But those are the books you're going to need for this class. And like I said, nothing too onerous, nothing too long, too boring. I tried to pick things that I thought were short, snappy, interesting, and packed a lot of building into a short piece. So, and we'll talk about that, obviously, as the weeks go on. So, let's go back to our syllabus. Okay, instructor expectations. I kind of just expect you to be able to use, semi-proper grammar, punctuation, to be able to write an essay. You're only going to need to write an essay like twice in this class, but, be able to write an essay, being able to submit your work, that sort of thing. If you are somebody who's been having computer problems, internet access problems, mental health problems, anything like that, and you think that this is going to pop up during the semester and potentially be an issue, just give me a heads up. I'm happy to work with any of you, and if you need a little extra time for something, we can work it out. Just, shoot me an email. I'd rather know than be in the dark, because if we can get it sorted sooner, we can keep it from becoming a problem. Okay, so outcomes. What I expect you to learn by the end of this, I hope. Become familiar with different subsets of genre fiction. Develop the skills needed to write genre fiction by flouting tropes as well as using them to your advantage. Learning to give constructive feedback. Learning to take criticism. Learning to use criticism to revise one's work. And learn how to possibly publish your work in the future. With criticism, we're going to talk a lot about this in a couple weeks, but this is not going to be one of those classes where you obliterate your group mates. That's not my intent, and that's not helpful. The intent is that you will give them constructive, useful, concrete feedback, and not tell them that, like, oh, I think it's terrible, it's horrible, your characters are droll and boring. No, we're not going to take and do that. A couple of you who are on my roster right now have been in my class last semester. And those of you who have been in my classes, you kind of know that's not how it rolls. And often you guys are usually too nice. So we're going to talk about that in the next couple weeks when we get to feedback and stuff. But my point I'm trying to make is I don't want anyone to be freaking out thinking that people are going to absolutely be mean about their work, or that I'm going to rip apart their work, or their group mates are going to rip apart their work. If you find someone is giving you feedback or is giving you a hard time and they're not being, I don't know how to put this, they're not being necessarily nice, but they're being kind of bullyish, let me know. I'd rather sort it out early and talk to that other person. We'll kind of deal with it. But by and large, I don't find that my students are usually mean to each other. And I'm certainly not mean to you guys either. So you can ask my students who were in my class last semester. I'm not mean. And I'm sure some of you are like, yeah, okay. So the attendance policy. We're in the middle of a pandemic. This is kind of one of those where we kind of throw up our hands and say anything goes. And my whole point of this is I'm going asynchronous because the world is crazy. And I think we all need a break from Zoom, Google Classroom, Google Meets, etc. What I am planning on doing is at some point, probably in the middle of the semester, and then probably again at the end of the semester, I'm probably going to hold a synchronous meeting that's optional. So if you want to show up, you want to talk, you want to have questions, or, kind of just hang out for a little bit, I will probably do that. but I'm not going to make this a weekly thing because I think it is too much. Even from my own mental health standpoint, I find that kind of being on that clock and having to check in and make sure everything's good and the tech is fine, blah, 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 it's hard. So I'm trying to cut us all kind of a break, and it's going to be asynchronous. So you're going to see these videos. I will send you a million nagging emails to watch the videos and to do your homework and everything that's due. So you'll get those from me. You'll definitely not be out of touch with me. And I answer emails constantly. My phone is attached to my hand at all times, so I will always answer your emails promptly. Okay, so with that, if you're sick or you need kind of a mental health extension or something's going on, we have a snowstorm that takes out power lines, just give me a heads up and I will happily help you and we'll work something out. Your health and safety is really my priority. I care about that at this point. School's great. This is creative writing. It's important, but it's not life or death. So, I like to put it in perspective. Okay, so we'll deal. Okay, let me just make sure we're still... Okay, good. Okay. Academic integrity. Don't hand me in things that you didn't write. I will find out. I don't want to do the classic, I'm not stupid, but I'm not stupid. I'll figure out if it's plagiarized from somewhere. There are plenty of ways for me to find this out. A, it makes you look really bad. B, it makes a lot of paperwork for me. And C, you can get kicked out of school for it. So let's just not do it. It's creative writing. This is not life or death. There's no reason for you to cheat. Okay? So, I don't think that's going to be a problem. It has not been a problem yet, but keep an eye on it. Okay, Academic Support Center. If you want someone to look over your work, I believe they're doing online tutoring sessions, or you can go into the tutoring center itself. If you want anyone to take a look at anything, you can always email to me and I'll happily take a look and, give you extra feedback, answer your questions, deal with, punctuating dialogue, things like that. I'm happy to do that. Disability services. If you have a disability, even if you don't have a documented disability, because I know a lot of us have to self-diagnose, especially as young adults, hit me up, let me know what you need. I'll try to figure out a best way to kind of accommodate everything, make sure everything's good. I think with the class being asynchronous and totally online, this shouldn't be too much of an issue, but if it is, let me know. Okay. Assignments and grades. I need to fix one thing on here. And I will fix this on the syllabus and post it later. I'll repost this. So, there are kind of 4 things that make up your overall grade. And your grade will equal 100%, so you get 100 points this semester. And the big one is obviously, one of the big ones is writing drafts. So 4 times during the semester, you'll be expected to hand in either a story or an excerpt from a story, so a piece of a story, and you're going to have to turn in something that's 4 plus pages long. Usually I say 4 to 5 pages. It can be longer. I would prefer it not be shorter. And the draft should be well developed, using the skills you learned in class, at least be edited by you once before submitting it. Don't just kind of wham bam, thank you ma'am, and throw it up there. I'd like you to actually, kind of tidy it up before you hand it in. And I'm going to grade them for completion, and I'm going to give you feedback. So instead of saying Sarah gets an A and Tristan gets a B, I'm not going to take and do that because they're drafts. You're learning. It doesn't make any sense for me to grade something and have you feel bad about it when you're going to improve it. That's the whole point of doing this. So you'll get points for handing it in if you hand it in late. And I mean late. Like over a week late. You might get points off if we haven't really talked about that something was going on. I'll give you feedback on those pieces. And I'm going to warn you ahead of time, I write a lot on everything. So when you see a lot of ink on it, don't worry. I do that for everybody. It doesn't mean your piece is bad. It's just Professor J is verbose. So you'll see. There's a lot of feedback. And the whole point is that you're going to make these things. You're going to write them out. You're going to learn. You're going to use your new techniques that you're learning. And you're going to kind of I don't want to say just learn. But you're going to learn this semester. And that's the point, is that by doing, you learn. There will also be a genre fiction essay or project. You can either do it as a presentation or you can do it as just an essay. It's going to be either a 4-page essay with 2 sources on a topic tied to genre fiction. We're going to talk more about this later in the semester, but it can be about a certain subset of genre fiction, kind of the origins of it, where it's going, etc. The social issues surrounding a genre, so something like African futurism or magical realism, things like that. Or you can talk about the publishing industry, what sort of problems are there, what's a trend, what are some problems or issues or things that have been coming up recently. There's plenty to work with, and like I said, later in the semester we'll kind of talk about this a little further and you'll get more detailed instructions. Currently I'm going back and revising that essay to make it a little clearer, so we'll talk about it later. Workshops. Throughout the semester, you are going to have 4 workshops, 1 for each of those pieces that you're handing in. So every time you hand in a piece, it'll also be workshopped with your groups. And your groups will probably be 3 or 4 people, depending on how many students we have in this class. I think right now I'm up to 11, so we will see how I divvy that up. And what's going to happen is, ignore the thing on here about copies, because this is online, they're on Blackboard. But the whole point is that at a certain date, you're going to have feedback for your group mates. And what I noticed in the past is that feedback was kind of scant from a lot of my students. So we're going to devote a whole day, like a whole week's class, to talking about workshopping. And hopefully we will get more feedback from you all. So we'll talk about that. And I think it'll be clearer kind of what I'm expecting from you. So typically I would just tell my students like, oh, just give feedback. And usually they give a couple bullet points. In this case, I'm going to tell you, I want you to write more in essay form about how you feel about their piece, what it needs, etc. And I think that's going to make it more concrete. But we'll talk about that, I believe, in 2 weeks. And the last piece, which looks huge and scary and like, oh my god, 50% of my grade. But your portfolio at the end of the semester is 50% of your grade. And it's going to consist of your pieces. And I say 3-4 page fiction pieces. I'm going to put in commas or 12 plus pages that have been thoroughly revised and edited. So basically you're going to take your pieces that you had in class and you're going to take your feedback from me, take your feedback from your group mates, and you're going to go through and you're going to edit your work and revise it some more. So when you hand your portfolio, it should be a fairly polished piece. And when I say polished, I don't necessarily mean like it's publishing ready, but it's, it's getting there. And that you're kind of learning from your mistakes, you're growing, you're adding more detail, more layers, etc. And because this is online, and I'll correct this later, you don't need the original drafts or all that. You're just going to need the revised pieces, and you're also going to have a 2-page reflection essay. And the 2-page reflection essay is basically you telling us kind of what you learned, what inspired the story, what you changed, how you changed it, that sort of thing. And we'll talk about that as it gets later in the semester as well. Okay, so it says no late work will be accepted. It's a lie. Typically, I will accept your late work. The only thing that I don't take late for obvious reasons is your final portfolio because, I get 72 hours to grade this thing, so you have to hand that in on time. The other thing is workshop cannot really be handed in late because your group mates are waiting on that. And that's the only thing where it gets a little complicated as to you handing in your workshop feedback late. So we'll talk about that, and if you think you're going to be late or you're having problems or you're ill, let me know and we'll figure something out with that. Okay, a note on grading. This is kind of a biggie, I think. With grading, obviously it's creative writing. There's no right or wrong concrete answers. But the other thing is that, even though you've taken my feedback and you've taken your group mates' feedback, and you've revised your work, you might still not get an A on that particular piece. And I think you all kind of know this, that, some people's papers are kind of at an A- level when they hand them in. And they do their revisions, and now it's an A. Other people hand in their work, and it's a C+, and they do the revisions, and they take the feedback, and it gets up to a B. It kind of depends on what level you were starting at as to how much that feedback will work in that moment. We can't correct everything at once. So the good thing, though, is that you could always take your pieces, edit it, work on it, and then maybe a couple weeks later be like, hey, professor, would you be willing to take a look at my paper and give me some more feedback? And I'll tell you, yeah, sure, I'll take a look at it. I will do that. I have no life. I'll happily look at your work. So if you want to continually edit it and hand it in, you can take and do that. I suggest that more for my students who are struggling with this or, maybe are getting feedback that's a little denser and a little more general, because that means you have general problems with your work and bigger construction problems. If you're a perfectionist, you may drive me a little nuts, but that's okay. We'll work on it. Because I don't want students to get fixated on getting an A. Most of you will get a very good grade in this class. If you're handing in everything else, there's a good chance that you're probably going to, get an A or B in this class. I'm not mean. I'm not a hard grader to begin with, and I've kind of structured this so even if you're not the best writer on earth, you can still get a good grade because you've put in the work and the effort is really what I care about. Okay, so some general standards for prose pieces, prose being like stories. Grammatically sound. If you're not the best at grammar, that's okay. I just want you to try. I want to see that there's an effort put in, that it's not sloppy, is basically it. No drama for the sake of drama, and what I mean by that is that everything kind of makes sense. You're not just like jumping the shark, as they say. No blatantly good or evil characters, so, we have to make things realistic. Even if we're writing genre fiction, we still have to be kind of grounded in reality. We can't just have everybody be, cackling maniacs. We have to go a little deeper than that. Every word, character, detail, situation has a purpose. All kind of ties back to the same idea that, do things purposely, do things so they make sense. Don't just throw things in because you feel like it. Tropes must be used thoughtfully. I love tropes. Tropes are useful. Tropes are kind of like things that you see happen in works over and over again. So things like the brooding hero, the femme fatale, or the big joke with romance is like, only have one bed, and then they get snuggly, they fall in love, that kind of idea. Or enemies to lovers. Those kind of things are tropes. And they're fun. They're a lot of fun, and we want to make sure that we're using them in a way that's thoughtful, maybe a little subversive, trying to use them in an interesting way. Okay. Rubric for final stories or scenes. So when you hand things in, things just for you to kind of take a look at before you hand them in. Are the characters complex, interesting, flawed, believable? They do not need to be all these things at once, but, we want to make sure that we're building upon that. Is the story plausible while still being interesting? And when I say plausible, I don't mean necessarily that like, oh, it's set in outer space. We can't be in outer space. No, that's not what I mean. It's more so, does it make sense? Does everything kind of fit? Is the story or characters original, not cliched? A little cliche is fine, but we just want to be careful. Is the story cliched or tropey? Like I said, once again, we can have some tropes. We just don't want it to be like so tropey that it's boring. Is there tension throughout the story that makes the reader want more? So we have to be careful sometimes that we're not making everything kind of slice of life. Slice of life being kind of like, it's cozy and cuddly and domestic, but there's not really a whole lot going on, or, there's no conflict. So we just kind of want to be careful of that. Is the dialogue natural? We'll get to that in a couple weeks. Are there copy editing errors? So, just run spell check, double check your work, etc. Does the narrative show depth of thought and attention to editorial changes? So in your final pieces, I want to make sure that you're moving forward, that you're not just kind of handing in things that you handed originally with no edits or revisions. We want to make sure that we're progressing. But when you hand things in as your stories, that's not such a big deal because I care about you doing the work, etc. Okay, so class schedule. I hate surprises. So everything on here should be what we're doing that week. I tend to kind of, how do I put this? I tend to plot things out ahead of time, but with this class, because this is one of my absolute favorites to teach, I also leave a little wiggle room because I want to cover things that you all are interested in. And I think, within the first couple weeks, I tend to kind of get to know you. I read your stories, and I'm like, oh, okay, let's see. I can kind of work this class toward what the class is interested in. So, we're going to go over characterization, we're going to go over dialogue, we're going to go over kind of symbols, construction, adding flavor to your stories, conflict, blah, 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 setting. And some of you who were in my class last semester, my creative writing class, some of these will be familiar to you, but we build upon them in this class. So I try to make this class useful to those who have not taken creative writing, like intro to creative writing, that you still get those foundational pieces, and those who have taken that class, that you learn beyond that. So if you see some things from last semester, it's okay. We're going to grow past that. But we got to kind of build our foundations for those who have not taken that class. So The other thing we're also going to go cover on here, which is not listed, is we're also going to talk about things like action scenes and fight scenes. We're going to talk about romance and how to kind of build that. We're going to talk about things like blood spatter and weapons and, you know, kind of the nitty-gritty of genre fiction. I think it's a lot of fun. If there's anything that you want me to cover that you don't think I'm necessarily going to cover, let me know. And I'll happily kind of work it in that way because I want to make sure that I'm teaching things that you all are interested in. So I will happily take and cover anything. I have all the classes kind of laid out in here so you can get an idea of when we have days off, when things are due, all that. So, yeah. So that should all be good, I think. Okay, so let's get out of here. Let's go to Blackboard. Let me just close this garbage. Okay. So, pretend you've arrived on Blackboard. I want to give you a little tour. So, welcome to my class. So, announcements, I will always email you. You'll see my emails a lot. You'll be like, oh god, she's emailing again. But you'll get that there. And kind of the announcements will have just general things that I think students are going to keep asking me. I will put in announcements. Not that I don't love you all, but when I get the same email 14 times, I want to scream. So it'll be on there. If it's a frequently asked question, it's going up on Blackboard. So that's under announcements. Lessons and lectures. That is where I'm going to post this video, and that's where I'm going to post materials for the next couple classes. I'm debating whether I'm going to post this on YouTube or whether I'm going to post it directly on here. I may start posting them directly on here and then eventually put them on YouTube. I'm not sure. I'm trying to make this easy for everybody, and YouTube will give me the ability to make captions. So we'll see. Okay, but anything that you're going to need for lessons for this class are going to be under lessons and lectures. The next thing is handouts, which we kind of popped in before. So syllabus, which I'm going to, let me just save that and close it. Boop. Let me fix that while I'm thinking about it. So I'm going to put the updated syllabus that I just fixed up there. So let me just fix that. So that's there. Okay. So besides the syllabus, the other thing they have on here currently is the Pinterest board of useful writing tidbits. And if you click that, it'll kick you over to here. And I have made a Pinterest board over the course of about 6-7 years of all the interesting writing things I have found on Pinterest that I think could be of any use to anyone. I'm also a writer, and I'll talk about myself in a little bit, but there's everything on here. So if you need something, or if you're stuck, or you're like, I'm not really sure what I want to do, or I can't find something, pop by the Pinterest board, because I got a lot. There's like, I think, a couple hundred pins. So take a look when you get the chance. I feel like it'll be useful for you. As you can see, writing resources, help, fun, and miscellaneous silliness. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. And I think it's useful if you have any pins that you stumble upon along the way. You're like, hey, Professor J, you should add this. Email them to me, and I happily will. Okay, going back over here. The next important piece we have is our discussion board. So once again, I said I don't like surprises. So everything is up here. Everything has dates. I like dates because it makes it so that I'm not freaking out as to when things are due. And you will see they all have the due dates and everything on them. So one of the things you'll notice with workshop, and like I said, we'll talk about this in a couple weeks before the workshop, but I want to give you a heads up now. Your drafts for workshop will be due the Friday before our class. So our class is on Tuesday, technically. So your feedback will be due on Tuesdays. But you will need to post your work on Friday. And I'll remind you, you'll get annoying emails. I'll probably email you Thursday. I'll email you Friday. And if you haven't posted, I'll email you Saturday. Because I'm annoying. But let's say for our first one, which is in February 23rd. So that's when your first feedback is due, February 23rd. But you will have to post your story by the 19th. So you'll have to make sure that you do that. And like I said, I will remind you. It's written right here as well. And you will have workshop groups. I have not made them yet because the add drop period is still open. I don't know who's going to kind of be finalized in our class. So when it gets closer, I will make those groups and I will kind of tell you what that's about when it gets closer. So don't worry about that right now. I have the listing for when your project is due, your portfolio, etc. Okay. The other thing you will see right here is kind of week 1, getting to know you. This is not for a grade. I just kind of wanted to get to know everybody. I know some of you, sort of. Some of you I've met in person before. Shout out to Anthony and Alon and I believe Samantha. I think I've all met you in person. I feel like seeing you all in person was so long ago. But I've met some of you. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to hold a Zoom or Google Meeting call at some point during the semester and see your faces. And you can see mine. Ugh. But for now, what I'd like you to do is, I would like you to tell me a little bit about yourself. So just, however many words it takes to do it, or bullet points or what have you. I don't really care. Just let me know kind of who you are. Oh, Tatiana, also, forgot you were in my class this semester. Just post about who you are. What makes you you, what pronouns do you use, what do you like to read, watch, consume, what fandoms are you part of, any genres you're really into, and maybe why you decided to take this class. Like I said, it's not for a grade, I just kind of want to get to know you. And let me talk about genres for a second, because I realized I assumed right past this and forgot to even talk about it. So what genres are, and let me just bring up my little notepad here, and I'll bring up Word. Okay, so let's just talk about this for a second. Genres. What they are kind of categories of fiction. And we're going to talk a lot about this next class. Categories of fiction, so things like romance, sci-fi, fantasy, historical fiction, contemporary, even things like literary fiction, which likes to pretend that it's not a genre, but it is. All those things are considered genres. And basically what it is a category or a flavor of fiction. So in the same way chips can be French onion or barbecue, books, media, movies are genres. So things like Star Trek, Star Wars, saga, those are all science fiction. Things like Avatar, Legend of Korra, I'm totally blanking on everything I've ever watched or consumed. Those are all fantasy. Steven Universe is fantasy. I'm trying to think what's current, and I'm blanking on everything, so just ignore me. Romance. You guys know all those holiday rom-coms that come on every year on Hallmark Channel and Lifetime, and things like The Holiday or Last Holiday. Is that the one with Queen Latifah? The Holiday. You get the idea. Those are all rom-coms, so it's a romance. Historical, things like Downton Abbey, Bridgerton, those are all historical. And often things are subgenres, and we're going to talk all about the next class. Horror, things like, any book by Stephen King, Freddy vs. Jason, I think Alien vs. Predator is sci-fi horror as well. So, there's a lot of intermixing. And we'll talk about that. But it's interesting. And I kind of want to know, what genres you like, if you write, what kind of things do you like to write. Yeah, so also, talking about your submissions for this class. I want to make it clear to all of you that I will read anything. I love books. Which, you would think that'd be a prerequisite for English teachers, but it really isn't. But I like books. I like to read everything. I read fantasy, sci-fi, historical, poetry, graphic novels. I love a good comic book or manga. I love romance novels. I love everything. It's kind of bad. But my point is that anything that you want to write is fair game. I will read anything that you want to write for this class. So anything goes. And I think some of my students tend to panic a little bit because I think with creative writing, there's kind of this expectation that it must be high literature. And that's not the case here. I want you all to be writing things that you're interested in, that you're excited about, that you're just jazzed to put in time to write. And that's really what I care about. So write the book that you want to read, or the movie that you want to see, that sort of idea. I'm an author, just to let you know. This is my page on Goodreads, so I'm just going to scroll down here. I've written, I forgot how many books. 7 books. 7 novels. They're all historical fantasy. All pretty queer as well. So those are up there, and no, I don't expect any of you to read them. Seriously. That is not my intent. I'm just showing you that, I write things that are genre fiction. I love genre fiction. I think it's fun and exciting, and there's just so much to explore, and it's something that excites me. You'll see. I'm excitable. And my biography is on there, so I'll let you guys know kind of a little bit about myself since I'm asking you to do that this week. My name's Kara Jorgensen. I'm a queer writer. My pronouns are she or they. I love all things kind of morbid. I love dogs. I love crocheting. I love to write and read. I like going to the beach in winter because it's like kind of dreary and it feels kind of gothic. I like to say that I am kind of like Julia Child meets Vincent Price. That's kind of who I am. I talk a lot, so you're going to sit here and you're going to sit through lectures and you're going to be like, please shut up, and I'm very sorry ahead of time. But I want this class to be fun, and that's kind of the big thing. I think, creative writing sometimes takes itself a little too seriously, and I want you all to enjoy the process, to learn from it, to write books that you're excited about. And, I'm excited to read your work. I have not met you all yet. I've met some of you, and I will tell you everything I read last semester, pretty much everyone's stories, I was like jazzed to get the next piece. Once again, with pieces for a workshop or when you're turning things in, they do not need to be a complete work. It does not need to be a whole short story. It can be a couple pages of a work that you're working on. If you have kind of a novel in progress, let's say you've written something, maybe you've gotten like 30 pages into it, yes, you can hand in parts of that work each week. The only thing I would say to you is please make sure that you kind of take a look at it ahead of time, do a little editing before you hand it in. Just, put it into a little, touch-up shape before you hand it in. That's all. But yes, you can do that. And I'm not expecting, complete short stories in 4 or 5 pages. I think that's absurd. So if you want to hand something in that's concise and done in 4 and 5 pages, that's fine. If you want to hand in something that's an excerpt of a longer work, that's fine too. It's up to you. But yeah, I think they've pretty much covered everything. Week 1, I typically don't dive too deep into anything because the add drop period's still open. I don't want to put my students who are coming into the class late kind of behind the 8 ball. So this is pretty much where we're going to end today. I want you all to be excited about this class because I'm excited. I can't wait to read your stories. No pressure. But I want this class to be fun and enjoyable. Also, I would like you to make sure that... I'd like you to make sure, too, that you get the books for this class. If you're not sure what those books are, if you go to the syllabus, they're toward the top, and they should be there. They're on Amazon. They're pretty cheap. I know people don't want to give money to Amazon, but I just throw it up there because they have the cheapest prices. And most of you don't typically have a whole lot of money. I don't. So that's where I'm sending you. So if you can this week, please fill out my Getting to Know You board over here. If you have, I'm assuming most of you use Blackboard. So if you click this, you click Create Thread. If it decides to work, hit Create Thread. Your subject line can be Kara, whatever. And just whatever you want to write in there. And then hit Submit. We'll talk about submitting our pieces in a week or so. Just know if you're using Google Docs, that's fine. If you're using Word, that's fine. If you're a Mac user, just please make sure that you don't hand in your work as a Pages file because people with PCs like myself cannot open it. So just kind of be careful of that. PDFs are fine. Google Docs are fine. Word files are fine. Just be careful with Pages files. And I'll remind you all of that as the semester goes on. So, I'm going to leave you at that. This lesson, when I'm done, will be under Lessons and Lectures. And I will post it, and you should be able to view it whenever. If you have any questions, please email me. My email is kjorgensen@caldwell.edu, and you'll see it on your syllabus as well at the top. Also, I believe if you go into, let me just see, Caldwell University email, and you hit compose, and you start typing my name in, There you go. I pop up. So just kind of, be careful of that, only because my last name is longer and is easily misspelled. So just make sure that you're sending it to the right person. I typically reply pretty quick to everything, so if I've not replied to you, double check that you've gotten my email correct. Okay, so I will see you all next week when we start talking about characterization. So be ready. Start thinking about what you might write for class if you don't have anything already. And I hope you all have a fantastic first week back. So stay safe, stay healthy, stay masked up, and I will see you all next week.